So welcome everybody. Welcome to today's discussion series. We're going to start. We're starting a series around Copilot. We're going to kick it off today with getting ready for Copilot and preparing your business for that AI-powered productivity. We want to go through a series where we talk about being prepared and ready for it, to adopting it, and to optimizing it, and making sure that we're getting the most out of it. So today's topic is all about that initial stage, about getting ready for Copilot usage. So a couple of things around the format of these types of discussions. If you haven't been to one of these before, this discussion is recorded. Please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A if you have any questions, and we'll try and answer them either on the fly or as we kind of come towards the end of today's discussion. We do have some experts and some additional people inside the chat that can help answer those questions. And we'll provide the video content links later after the session. But before we begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the Gadigal land, both online and offline, on which we meet today, and we pay our respects to our elders, both past and present. In a way of introduction, so hi, I'm Chris Hales. I'm the Cloud Technology Strategist here at cubesys, and I work along the team of both delivery and sales. And I'd like to introduce you to our panel of speakers today, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So we might kick off with Mark. Do you want to give just a quick introduction to yourself?
Thanks, Chris. I'm Mark West. I head up the architecture and insights team at Lifeline. I'm dialing in from Bundjalung country up near Lismore today. And as part of my role, I also sort of spearheading the sort of the AI adoption and data governance piece as well. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Simran, do you want to give yourself a quick intro?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Hello, everyone. My name is Simran Jaggi. I work at Microsoft as a cloud solution architect, and where I focus helping organizations successfully adopt AI and digital solutions. And I look forward to sharing some stories, lessons, and best practices with you today, and hearing everyone's perspective as well. So thank you for having me here.
And over to you, Paul.
Hi everybody, I'm a co-founder and CEO at cubesys. Today though, I'm here as a guest. I'm going to get some questions. I've, similar to Mark, been spearheading the adoption of AI, and I'm really interested to talk to you about some of the non-technical aspects that go alongside some of the sort of safeguards we need in place, and the fact that we took on systems thinking at the same time as AI, and I'll explain why as we go through this.
Thanks. Well, I guess we should just kind of dive right into it, really. So we've all got an understanding of the AI readiness vision, which is all about the people, the process, and the data foundations. I'm going to open this up to our panelists today. And I might start with yourself, Paul, if you wouldn't mind talking to how cubesys has adopted an AI readiness vision.
Yeah, look, we made the decision couple of months back now to, having played with Copilot for a long time, to deploy that across the whole company, everybody in the company, every function. And we did that partly because of some of the changes at Microsoft and the capabilities that Copilot Chat brought to the fore. And it's awesome to see ChatGPT 5 rolled out so quickly into that, by the way. But also because we did some maths on the return on investment, and I think it was very obvious that we would get our money back from that investment in Copilot very, very quickly, because we only really needed to save an hour or two a week, right, through the use of AI to make that a commercial and business decision, and that was easy to move forward to. And of course, we wanted to drive forward and learn AI so that we could bring some of these experiences to our client base.
And what about you, Mark? What about Lifeline's? I guess I know you're quite early on in your kind of AI journey, but how is Lifeline treating the AI readiness internally?
Yeah, good question, Chris. I mean, obviously with Lifeline, as you said, we're sort of early on in the journey, but we're looking at where can it help us augment, not necessarily in service delivery. I think we're a little way away from that, but we also have, you know, our office systems, our internal processes that we need to sort of augment. And I suppose one of the key things for us around the readiness was actually understanding that people are using AI regardless anyway. So it's really about making sure that we're in the best position to be able to provide guidance and understanding around where the use of AI is appropriate and where it might not be. And obviously, some of the risks that come along with AI and data exposure, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but understanding where the data is and how it's secured and how it can be appropriately used is something that we really wanted to get on the front foot with. So us really, we're trying to be proactive around this, and I think anybody who thinks that it's not coming probably needs to have another think. So it's really just making sure that we've got the right processes in place and guidance around them. We are a human-centered organisation, obviously, as Lifeline. So we need to make sure that we're using AI appropriately.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, that human-centric, side of AI, right? And being prepared for that. And I guess that kind of leads us into there's obviously a technical element to AI and to Copilot in particular. Unfortunately, the pixelation of this graphic is not fantastic on scale, but the M365 Copilot architecture is quite a unique one in the sense that it still leverages the same large language models in the background. But it's all within the context and confines of your access to the graph, right? To Microsoft Graph and its API. So that contextual security is a really important thing when we talk about the human element of that. But I always find that there's one little box in here that doesn't have a very great explanation, and it's RAI. Simran, can you give us just a very brief summary around what RAI is and how it is a large factor inside the M365 architecture?
Yes, thanks, Chris. So RAI in here is called Responsible AI in Copilot, and that is the one most important bit in this whole diagram today. So once the AI has generated an answer for you, it doesn't just hand it straight to you. Microsoft runs through a feature called Responsible AI System. Think of it as a safety inspector for AI, where it checks that the output is safe and compliant, whatever the policies you have set up in your organization today. So even though AI is powerful, you can trust it to work within the same security and boundaries you have set up. So responsible AI is a key in here to make sure that the results you get, the outcome you get, is according to these policies you have set up within your organization. An example would be a doctor asks a Copilot in Microsoft Word for a patient treatment plan. And what the responsible AI really does in here, it makes sure that AI doesn't really give you a medical advice that's not allowed to give. It keeps the answer safe. It keeps it according to the hospital guidelines to make sure that you get the solution to get the plan, what you need, what you have to have a plan for. You can't, it doesn't give you something which shouldn't be there. So I think that's where I feel responsible AI is really, really important part of Copilot and AI.
And again, kind of talking that model, the human-centric part of Lifeline, that RAI is incredibly important when it's being leveraged to surface data and information that a call center representative, for example, in Lifeline might be leveraging to answer a question that's being proposed to them over the phone. And in some of those examples, there are, I guess, timely requirements for that information to be surfaced. It's one of those interesting kind of components. As you can see here in this diagram, it shows you the kind of the flow of a single prompt. But I think that RAI piece is not necessarily well understood sometimes. And I think it's important that we have a better understanding of what that means, both not only to our prompts, but to the information that we're being surfaced back as well. So I think with the architecture as a high level understanding, I think we can kind of start to dive a little bit deeper into the bones of preparing ourselves for unleashing this significant technology into our environment. And when we start to talk about data governance, it's not a new problem. I think all of us would agree that it's not a new problem inside any kind of corporate environment, but it is a problem that has a very unique kind of lens now that AI is going to be unleashed at it. So I'm going to, again, pass this around the room a little bit and ask both Paul and Mark to give, I guess, your interpretation of what each business has done in order to prepare themselves for the data governance, and have you taken, I guess, these three kind of key steps with your organizations? I might ask Mark first, if that's all right.
That's Chris. Yeah, of course, data governance, always the most interesting of things, but it is something that's important, and especially with AI. And one of the things that we've found is in order to operationalize AI adoption, you need a data governance, or you need some sort of framework in which to stand that up in. It's actually really interesting. We undertook the with you guys, we undertook the Microsoft Copilot readiness assessment, and of course, SharePoint and the access to SharePoint is something that's like all organizations, it could do with a bit more tuning around this responsible access, right? It's really interesting actually, because a lot of pushback was, we can't enable AI because we need to do all our security and have everything locked down and properly controlled through that responsible access. And the answer to that is yes, you do, but the risk is already there. It's not like it's a new risk, and that's one of the things that we've been finding. Copilot effectively will increase the likelihood of that, but the risk is the same and the impact is the same. So if someone has access to documentation that they shouldn't have, that obviously needs to be pulled out. So we've been looking at ways around assessing that risk and understanding. We're going to do a very controlled pilot, and we're starting to put in place our AI policy, which we're working with, and that's got to go through quite a few hoops to get endorsed by the board. We're also looking at providing AI user guidelines for people. So anybody wants to use AI, we're looking to provide a very simple sort of set of guidelines around the responsible use of AI and the use of AI in the workplace. And we're also looking at developing our own AI, so not just Copilot. And there's we believe that there's two sort of risk appetites there. One is for AI in the workplace, but then if we also want to start doing things like topic discovery or distress mapping, we want to have a look at how we do that, and that's going to need a higher level of scrutiny. So we see that almost being a bit of a two-speed adoption here, and one will come before the other. So hopefully we'll get Copilot out of pilot stage and sort of a bit more widely adopted
okay.
in the organization.
Interesting. And what about you, Paul? How has cubesys kind of tackled this particular kind of data governance approach?
Yeah, I'll give you some anecdotes in a second, but I think we started off in a very strong position. cubesys, since inception, 13 years, have had really strong controls around SharePoint and naming standards and things. It's something myself and Simran, as the other co-founder, have had quite a passion for many years, and that really helped us adopt AI very, very quickly. But at the same time, to my point, policies need putting in place and guidelines need putting in place, right? And so the people aspects were really, really important. And we also at cubesys wanted to lift our game a little bit. And so at the same time as adopting AI, we made a strategic decision to adopt systems thinking, because what we wanted there is, as we're getting that interaction with AI, is to have feedback loops and improvements and all that good stuff that comes with systems thinking. So, and exposing that to the team and giving them a mechanism to be able to sort of clearly do that. So they were important factors for us. But I'll give you a little interesting one that we're debating internally at the moment around the data cleanup. Early on when we rolled that out, I remember querying a Copilot around org structure, and as a founder, and I'm pretty much sure I know everybody that's worked for cubesys over the 13 years, it informed me that my CFO was somebody called, I don't know, Stephen somebody I've never heard of, right? And I went, where the heck is he getting that from? So I did a little bit of digging, and what we'd done is left a sample Excel spreadsheet that was for creating org structures in Visio, was in a SharePoint folder somewhere. So one of the things we're looking at cubesys is not just making sure we've got that data governance in place, but we actually clean up after ourselves, because if you leave data behind that's will misinform AI. You'll get answers that are wrong, right? And so that's one of the things. It did its job perfectly well, right? And it's just that the data that was sat there was wrong. And that was a silly sample document from way back. It had been used years ago. I just sat there in a SharePoint file. So one of the things we're looking at is how often we clean up the data and make sure it's relevant so AI can really help us do our jobs.
I think it's quite interesting, right? There's a lot of stories around not hallucinations of information, but that surfacing, that ability to surface out that information is quite difficult.
It was just to Mark's point there, right? Is that the risk is there today, right? It's not that it isn't there. The permissions and the structures like that, but what Copilot does can really elevate that and bring it right into the in front of you in your day-to-day operations. The more you use AI, the more important it is that we have really good data inside our business to get the right outcomes for AI, right? So that data cleanup is something we're tackling at the moment. I can see. Is there something you're going to add from a Microsoft perspective there? Is that something you're seeing across all your clients? Or?
Well, I always, whenever I speak to my customers, I always say AI is not good as your data. And if your data is clean, you don't have the proper security in place. I mean, AI is not a magic wand that can just bring up the information, bring up the security. Security can't be just done on the having firewalls and everything. Security has to be done on the inside of your world today. Or else AI just bring up the information to me or anyone. People don't need to have that information, right? So I think all of that needs to be taken care of. And I agree with you and Paul and Mark. I think what you talk about, that is so important. And I think we need to have those structured data in place and clean data.
It's a challenge, right? And it's a challenge. I think, Mark, you and I have talked about this many times. It's like SharePoint or back to the old file systems we used to have way back with permissions on folders going down 10 levels and things. So it's housekeeping is not something we're good at. So I think using the right tool sets to get there quickly is important, because we really do need to release the power of AI. Because if we don't, our people are going to go and do it externally, right? And we don't want that, right? So we really do need to release the power, but that means getting our house in order first, right? And we need to do that quickly and sensibly.
Yeah, I think it makes. Sorry, you go.
Oh no, it's the same. The data cleanup thing is especially now. I mean, we're just in the middle of our ISO 27001 audit as we speak, and data cleanup, having data around, and I'm not talking like sort of helpful or interactive data, but just even internal data or finance data hanging around when it's no longer needed is also now a risk to the business. I had a really good analogy. Someone said data is no longer the oil, it's the nuclear toxic waste, and if you've got it lying around, there's a risk associated with that. So one of the things that we're finding is that cleanup and that tidying up of and structuring of our data or information in general is an important thing. So that's really good.
And one of the things I've also seen that people have a lot of data still sitting there, old data, and they're not really doing anything to archive that data if they don't really need it. I understand there's some compliance reasons, so I think people need to start looking at what do they really need right now, what can they archive. So I think these are the important things they need to look into it as well before they start thinking about, okay, what data I need to clean up.
I think it's similar. That's exactly what my example was around, right? It's so funny that at cubesys, because we've been so structured and used our SharePoint well right from inception, we actually have data that's 13 years old, right? Now, if you go back to our steps of work and our designs and our requirements gathering stuff, how useful is those things from 13 years ago? The technology has changed so much, they would actually give AI the wrong information, right? And so I think that's the debate we're having now about how we have an effective plan to archive things, right? And to make sure that AI doesn't get polluted with old information, right?
The thing is, Paul, it doesn't need to be manual. There are a lot of automations in place. You can have the data life management policies you can set up to have all data going to archive automatically so that you don't have to do too much work. It's about getting smarter with it.
Yeah. And look, the thing there is that we've never really had the need to do that, and because we had well-structured libraries and things, it didn't matter. But now, because we're surfacing that through AI, it does, and so we've got to change how we approach it. Yeah.
And I think you're all starting to really start to talk about this whole risk appetite and those governance realities. I think we've already started blending into that side of the conversation, where you've already identified the risk of maintaining or retaining data for too long. You know, in Mark's example, to Paul, your example around, you can do that if it's got the right controls and it's clean as on entry and clean and still relevant today, right? So leveraging historical data is also important for something like AI, right? Around creating context and creating background when we use it. So I think, you know, let me twist the arm a little bit here and kind of ask a little bit more around, you know, Paul, what risks did you and Sylvan actually, I guess, consider when it was the early stages of your adoption, right? What were you most concerned about when it came to the appetite of risk, when it came to exposing your data to AI, as well as what did you do to solve that problem?
I think let's start with being really frank and honest, that if we don't deploy something like Copilot, where, you know, as to your architecture earlier, that we've got those controls and that responsible use of AI, then our company data, our people would start using all sorts of other AI solutions out there, right? And they would take our data outside the organization. I see that as a way bigger risk. But in taking a broader angle, I think there's a really great question there in the Q&A section. Maybe Simran, you can jump in and help answer. I think I know the answer, but it might come a little bit better from the Microsoft team there. There's also the risk of, like, well, when we're using AI, what's happening to the models and the data? Is Microsoft going to use it to train its AI? Like, and what's the rules around that and that engagement? So do you want to maybe answer that question, Simran, from a Microsoft point of view?
Look, there's something called a risk, and there's something called a risk appetite and a governance appetite. The governance realities as we set up in our company. I think when it comes to risk, we have to know within our organization what is acceptable and what is not, and what can we expose to AI and what can we not. And I think it's about finding the balance. Doesn't matter what kind of tools you use, what kind of models you use within the AI. We have so many versions of models now. GPT Model 5 is out as well. But I think there's a human element is involved as well. We need to understand that what is a bigger risk? If this goes out, what is the biggest liability for the organization? So I think those are the things we need to be sure of, and there has to be a balance we need to find. And we set up governance within organizations anyway today, where our good intentions meet the real world today. It's one thing to write a policy, but I think it's another to make it work day to day, right? So security has to be broader, just not on the front door side of things, setting up front doors and firewall, as I mentioned. But I think we need to make sure that security is set up inside and out, within your organization, within the data.
And I think that raises more towards what Richard is asking inside out the Q&A section here around what is Microsoft's intention around the use of prompt data and current utilization of Copilot for training future models. I think there's an element of, I guess, you know, Richard, one of our customers here or one of our participants here is asking about what does Microsoft leverage usage of Copilot to train future models?
Look, we leverage. So to train future models, we have the guidelines in place. We use responsible AI, and we work with those guidelines today to make sure all the models which are coming out today, and make sure they are safe to use and they have the proper guidelines in place. And moreover, the security is all inbuilt and integrated into those models today. So you don't have to do anything out of the norms. And for example, people use Purview on top of these models today to make sure they have an extra layer of security on top with these upcoming models. So I think this is where I think Microsoft is thinking and going towards when it comes to usage of newer models coming up in future.
Okay. And has Microsoft made any public commitment to what they will or will not use when it comes to training those models?
That is something I am not too sure of, but I can find those information and see what is publicly available today.
No worries. Look, I appreciate that I'm putting you under pressure in answering that question.
Let me let me help answer it, Simran, because I know in the Trust Center, if you go and look up what Microsoft doing there, there's a great website about all Microsoft services and where the trust level is. Microsoft specifically say that they don't use your data to train models, right? It's not something they do with corporate data. So I know that the question was going into some of the nuances of that, but I'm pretty sure in the corporate and enterprise products that they're not used, right? It's off limits for the training of models. And Microsoft, when you think about how they position themselves on security and trust, massively important for cloud. So if we can't trust Microsoft, then how are we going to run our businesses? And so I'm pretty confident. We'll double check that for you, Richard. But that's the position of Microsoft. They're not going to use your data to train models.
Oh no, that is true. They're not going to use customers' data to train the models. If that is
awesome.
Sorry, I just read the question right now.
That's okay. Good. I just wanted to make sure we cleared that up. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was an interesting thing because we did an exercise actually with the executive all the way up to CEO level around sort of hopes and fears for AI, and that was to really sort of tease out this sort of risk appetite. And one of the key things that obviously, help seeker interactions is a key one for us, but also the intellectual property that we've developed around our care model, some of the data and thinking that we've got around advocacy for suicide and crisis support as well is Lifeline's intellectual property. So one of the hopes was that we'd be able to land somewhere, or conversely, the fears were about that letting our data be or our information on our IP be used outside of the organization, and then that was the key sort of driver for the adoption of or the pilot of Copilot, so that we can actually have control over that rather than I think cutting pasting stuff into
okay. As a business owner and leader of a company, it was like that was super important for me as well. And I was very aware, and you don't even need to look at my particular staff, but look at the questionnaires that are out there in the public forum, right? That everybody's playing and using AI. Everybody's having a go at it. So do you want that inside your business or outside your business? And then when I did the maths on the return on investment and realized I need to gain an hour a week per person, right? Then I know through use of Copilot, I'm going to get that back, right? It was a no-brainer at that point, because I want to discourage the use of other AI solutions because they're outside my org and I've got no visibility, and I don't want that IP or that data leaking outside. And do I have that trust center type response from Microsoft? What does ChatGPT or Elon Musk's AI, what do they say about policies and what they're going to do with their learning models? I know Microsoft, and I've been working with them for many years, and they publicly put out that trust statement. So I'm much more comfortable as a business owner going down that path than allowing my staff just to use it anyway. Right? So I think it really did help accelerate my decision on rolling it out across the whole company. Right? Everybody at cubesys now uses Copilot.
And I think that this little conversation we've just had here really kind of aligns to what's happening in the chat at the moment. There's been a bit of a conversation around, blocking other AIs and, creating policy definition to say Copilot is the choice. And I think it sounds to me like both Lifeline and cubesys here have had a similar kind of concern and risk raised, and they've made a conscious decision to go, no, we're partnering with Microsoft for our AI journey. And Mark, you're obviously doing some custom AI stuff on top of that as well. And I think a lot of companies are kind of facing that struggle at the moment of which one do I choose and why, and how do I stop that spread of my IP?
Sorry, Simran, you go first. You go.
I'm sorry. I think someone just mentioned shadow IT. I want to bring up this this shadow IT part. I think that is really important when it comes to having so many AI tools out there. For example, someone also mentioned AI chatbots. There's so many chatbots available. Which one to choose? I think it all comes down to trust. It's all come down to what do you trust that your data will be all secure and safe, whatever chatbots you use out there. Of course, people use ChatGPT today, but you don't know where your data is going today. people use Copilot today because you know where your data is sitting, and we have documented that, you know, what kind of model, whatever model you use, what geography your data is sitting in. So all the healthcare organizations, all the organizations out there, they make sure that they are using Copilot because they trust this. They trust this chatbot. They trust this model.
And my comment, Chris, was going to be around just to be transparent with everybody on the call. cubesys used to use ChatGPT 6 months ago because it was a better solution, right? Back then we used Copilot in the management team and leadership team for meeting notes, and the sales team used it in that context. But that's where we were getting the most value, and I couldn't really justify it across the rest of the organization. Now the change that happened when Copilot Chat came across, and now that parity with GDP means that we've shut down the use of GDP, and we used to use that, by the way, for our marketing and external facing help, right, and to help our sales and marketing team with their outward going messaging. So I felt that was not so much of a risk for our business. But now Copilot's caught up, and he's now, and like I said, but this week, you know, OpenAI announced ChatGPT 5, and Copilot had it within hours, right? And he was like ready to go. So we feel much more comfortable with that, and now we've got all that trust and reliance on the Microsoft ecosystem that we feel that's a much better way forward. Right?
I agree with you, Paul. I think 6 months ago when I was using ChatGPT versus Copilot, massive differences. I was not getting the answers I really wanted to get. But things have come out in a long way now with Copilot. I mean, I only use Copilot because I really don't have to use any other tools because it's giving me the answers I'm looking for. Giving me the output. So, it has come a long way.
It has changed significantly. Yeah.
And I think just to dive a little bit into the Shadow IT piece, the Purview has that whole AI component as well. If you're not leveraging something like that for Shadow AI visibility, so it'll track your users, and if they're logging into other AI components or other AI services, Purview has a lens to potentially visualize that for you. So just a little side note for those that are interested in that Shadow IT kind of componentry of Purview. Conscious of time, I want to maybe skip a story or two, but maybe talk a little bit about the actual change. But Simran, you brought a really good story from Bupa when in our setup of these webinar series, and I'd really like to hear how Bupa kind of tackled this challenge with their adoption of AI.
Yeah. I thought bringing this story is really powerful because we all know who Bupa is, and I have a private health insurance with them today. And I think I wanted to bring up this because Bupa has come a long way. Bupa looked at AI just not as a new technology. They wanted to deliver faster, better, on a bigger scale to their customers, right? And I think where they saw a lot of slowness is, you know, when the developers are developing a code here, it was taking time, effort, and I think we were not getting the outcome as a customer quickly as possible. So they started using GitHub Copilot, and with that kind of product, they saw that they have written 410,000 lines of AI-assisted code in no time, and it actually cut down a lot of repetitive work for them, and it brought us so many innovative solutions to customers like us. So today, you know, I feel that they have sped up their insurances claim, and I put an insurance claim through to them. It is, and I can get more of a personal health advice from them if I need to. And of course, it is freeing up their staff to answer my calls when I call them, to not doing other admin work. So I think AI has come a long way for Bupa, and you know, they have also identified so many other AI use cases which can be helpful for them to speed up stuff. Because I know in the past when I had to put in claims through to any private insurance, for health insurance, it took a big time for them to come back to me. And I think with AI, things have changed so much for us because health is a priority, and we need to be on top of it and need to be quick to answer someone who needs a private health or who needs a claim done as soon as possible, right? So I think that's why I wanted to bring up Bupa today, because I'm really proud of this story.
Well, thank you, Simran. And I think it does show that there's a lot of I guess, flexibility when it comes to implementing AI in many different use cases. And I think it kind of really helps us talk to Mark as well around, I know, Mark, you're still in your very early stages of adoption, and you've kind of gone through a really large, significant chunk of your preparation, but you're now starting to move to that adoption. I think the Bupa story is a really good example of identification and kind of rapid adoption. But can you give us a little understanding around how Lifeline's currently going through that journey themselves?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, we talked a bit about the preparing the governance and getting some of the policies and user guidelines and starting to get those adopted, and that's obviously key. But we've also trying to make it an enabler as well. So we want to actually actively enable these things. So we're making sure that we get everything in place, which will enable people to come along with some ideas. And there's a lot of people that have got ideas out there from the business. It's not just a technology solution that we're trying to roll out here, right? I'd love to say, Mark's like new shiny thing in AI, but it's really got to be driven by the business, and that there need to be a business need. And I don't think it's any different to any other sort of initiative that we look to take on. That there needs to be a reason, and there needs to be an output, and what does good look like. But we're taking more of an iterative approach as we start to roll this out, because I think, again, similar, I suppose, if I just put my data hat on, you'll know a lot more when you try something than if we spent all the time trying to do the analysis up front. So, if you can take some of one of the ones that we're looking at is taking some of our operations manuals and having a look at how those interact with a product like Copilot. It's very contained. Those operations manuals are accessible today to the workforce to be able to understand what they need to do, and really look at those processes. There's no I suppose the other key piece that we found is take the easy wins first. So don't look at things like PII data, right? It's probably not going to be the first thing that you're going to start pumping into an AI engine, right? It just, there's a lot of hoops jumped through, the risks are bigger there. But something like an operations manual, which is accessible to the workforce anyway, and currently sits there as a rather long PDF document that people always open up, and then they're going Control F and trying to find the section that they want to refer to. It's going to be a really good use case. And I'm really excited about that, because I think that the way that people interact with information is changing, and the way that I'm interacting with information is changing. The way people access that information. It's almost like I almost see it like being the sort of the next wave of knowledge management, knowledge representation, and knowledge base. And you see that, how people use the public AI engines as well. They're using them as ways of extracting information that's a bit more powerful than just using Google to search for certain things. So,
yeah, definitely.
We're definitely looking at those sort of those use cases that are I was going to say pass the pub test, but it's like you've got to be able to sort of say, well, look, there's a benefit in doing this. We're not just doing it because it's shiny. There's a reduced risk or a contained risk around the information that you're using to start with. And I think as you get more confident and competent with the tools, those use cases will present themselves quite rapidly, because you're understanding more about the information that you have.
And I think, Paul, you had a very similar approach when it came to the people and process. And so cubesys, obviously, I'm impacted by those decisions. How did cubesys kind of tackle that whole people and process side of that as well?
As you know, Chris, I'm a really patient man, and I like change to take our time to adopt things and do it. But no, I'm impatient for change, and I love technology and what it can achieve for us. So at cubesys, I very purposely made everybody uncomfortable and went for a really chaotic start to Copilot. And the reason I did that was a little bit aligned to what Mark was saying there is I thought that if we throw lots of mud at the wall, we'll see what sticks, and that will be the bit where we'll get the value from, and that'll be useful for us, right? So I purposely caused chaos inside my organization for the first few weeks, and then as that started to settle down, we picked the structure and where we're going to go first with AI, because there's so many use cases, and which one do I do first? I didn't know, right? I honestly didn't know, and I didn't want to do that analysis paralysis stuff back. I didn't want to wait, because the speed at which AI is really impacting businesses, I didn't want to be behind. And so the way I thought the best way to do that was to be a little bit chaotic. What's really been, I think, challenging for me personally, or a lesson learned, is that people change, right? So that change mechanism that we have inside of our organizations was way more difficult than all this stuff we've been talking about with data governance and things. I can put a structure and a project plan around that, and I have tools to help me like Purview, and I know how I can make progress. Getting people to change their habits, to use AI first for everything they do, right? Every email they write, every query they've got, to change their habits, that is the bit that's really hard. And that is, and we've got AI champions now, and we've sort of really started to sort of talk about it. Every company meeting at cubesys, AI is discussed, right? And we've got like Teams channels going on just all the time, little micro hints and tips and tricks and moving things, right? And that's been the hardest and most challenging part of adopting AI for in my mind, has been getting people to change, right?
I normally tell everyone, think about one thing in your daily task. You want to get it off your plate and have AI to do that job for you. What would be with that one thing? And then people start to think, okay, well, if the AI can do this for me, then I can do all these other stuff I meant to do. So think of AI as your partner who can take up some load from you, and while you concentrate on other things which you should be doing.
That's maybe one of the top tips, is that you shouldn't think of it as a tool or a piece of technology. You need to think of it as a person, right? An intern, a junior, an assistant, right? If you change your mindset and think of it like that, then you'll get much better results out. You talk to the damn thing, actually talk to it, right? Ask it and iterate on the questions, and you'll get so much like value out of that. It's amazing, and so fast, right? As well, it's the speed of Copilot and the AI results is phenomenal, right? Searching through your data and really pinging that point. And I, as a leader, I've really used it as a mentor as well. So I ask it questions. I say, hey, I sent this email out to the company. How could I make it better? What could I do? It hasn't landed well. What could I do this time? And really challenge it to make me a better leader and a better manager. So there's all sorts of use cases out there, but I think one of the challenges is that change mechanism, right? How do you get people to use it first, right? And we're still on that journey, and we're doing things like competitions and prompt of the week and all sorts of things to just try and embed it in our culture.
And I think Mark has a similar experience with the I guess the early adoption phase of where he's up to around, what you're defining, what you're trying to achieve with it. You've kind of not necessarily taken the chaotic approach that maybe Paul was interested in challenging us with, but you've taken more of a pragmatic approach. But you've also done that based on the controls of data and cadence of data that you needed in order to get a more effective outcome. And I guess there's a disproportionate of scale, right? Obviously, cubesys, we're only 30 odd people, and Lifeline's a much larger organization, so there's a much broader I guess scope around that. And I think even when we were doing our Copilot early adoption phase with just the management team at cubesys, I think there was a bit of a social contract construct of, you may see data or information that you may not or should not potentially see, and having a mechanism to have that feedback loop to go, hey, no, this has been surfaced, I'm not sure why or how or where from, but we need to make sure we secure that piece of data.
We actually do competitions in Microsoft for person. We record like how many prompts a person is using, and then we call that person out as a praise. And I think this is really good way to get people to use Copilot more.
That's an interesting concept. Yeah, go for it, Mark.
Yeah, I just done that sort of social contract. So I mean, obviously, if you're going to give people a tool like this, there needs to be some sort of guardrails or guidelines, and that's what we're putting in place. So we're with the pilot group, we've put together a social contract, but we've also given them a process to follow if they feel that they've seen something that they shouldn't. Right? So that allows us, they could raise a service desk ticket, service desk will investigate it and understand, where the permissions might not be, or the permissions are being respected, but they may not be as tight as they are. And we obviously have got purview in place as well for our data classification and labeling. So we're sort of really making sure that we only sort of open the taps a little bit for Copilot in terms of the publicly available data. We start getting into sort of more sensitive data.
Yeah, and look, I think it wraps up really quite nicely around the fact that we've got to make sure our house is in order when it comes to the data and making sure that it's got security. And there's benefits of doing a really well structured SharePoint from the start, and there's also the adoption of, or the migration or mitigation of your data structure and governance when you have a legacy data form that you need to then now modernize and prepare for AI as well. And I guess it does lead us into closing up and wrapping up today. I think we've got another 2 sessions that are kind of semi-scheduled. So these dates may shift slightly, but we're looking at doing our next session around adopting Copilot. I think we've touched a lot on that early stage of governance and preparation and that early adoption phase around that social contract that we've talked about and other things. And we're going to do a 3rd session more about scaling and building smarter businesses. And we're hoping to have some of these panelists back for some of those later discussions around how they've actually gone through their journey and what they've done to scale out the rest of their business. But I'm going to hand it back to the panel. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with our participants today? Maybe for you.
There's one thing I would like to say. We have a lot of people create a lot of use cases, where AI can be useful for them. There's a lot of complexity. I understand. I think you need to take a step back and look at the business, one priority business case, which might make a big difference to your organization today. So think of that. Take baby steps and do proof of values for all those use cases, those biggest use cases. And I think you will definitely see a lot of value with AI and Copilot.
Awesome. You got anything, Mark, before I go?
No, nothing. I'm just excited to see where we are in 12 months' time. I think it's still early days for us. It's
going to be amazing, Mark. I think what we can do with our organizations. Maybe my sort of final comment is just to get people to open the chat. Right? If you just open the chat there and you'll look at the answer that I posted around the question about data sovereignty. Now, the answer is not important. What the data that it was able to come within a few seconds, I asked it a 1-sentence prompt there, just where it is, and Copilot was able to come back with that level of detail. Now, the great thing about that is not only did it answer my question thoroughly, but it also gave me reference points so I could go and validate that and dig deeper into the subject. And that's what's happening inside of cubesys now for all our staff. So all our operational things, back to Mark's operational manuals and things, when we ask Copilot that, because we're adopting that system thinking to give it structure around it and metadata around that, when an engineer asks a question like, how do I do this, right? It will not only give them instructions, but it gives them the people that own the process and wrote that so they can go and have a conversation with it. It gives a reference to the internal documents and to external documents. That type of stuff is seconds away, right? And it makes you so much more productive, right? And it can really open the floodgates to productivity inside your business, which is why the return on investment question was so easy inside of this cubesys. And I think it would be for nearly every organization, right? But I think that's maybe a little nugget to leave you with, is like the potential of AI is really quite phenomenal. Right?
And cubesys is a great success story for adopting Copilot. Chris has told me really cool stuff. You guys are using Copilot today, so that's pretty cool to see that.
Yeah.
Yep, the chaos worked.
I'm jealous.
Well, as we wrap up today, look, thank you to my panelists. I really appreciate you giving up your time today and your insight. Thank you so much for today. And I'd like to thank all of you who attended today. As always, we will follow up with some emails where we will get links to the video of today's session. And thank you for coming along, and we hope to see you at the next one.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Chris.